God of War 2018 was one of the best games I have played in the past decade. This tour de force of creative talent, expert storytelling, and masterful gameplay represents some of the best our medium has to offer. And if the recent trailer for the upcoming God of War Ragnarok is any indication, the sequel looks like it will be a masterpiece that dominates the gaming scene of 2022. I've seen a whole host of videos where many intelligent people have made plenty of predictions about the sequel, but I think many of these videos miss something insanely important when discussing possibilities in sequels. In fact, whenever I see videos about upcoming Marvel movies or Star Wars movies or whatever, people seem to hyper-focus on the specifics. Looking at things like who is cast in what roles and analyzing individual frames of what we see in trailers can give us a general idea of what may happen in the sequel for any movie or game. But I think there are two overarching concepts that are key to understanding how a sequel will play out. What I'm talking about is theme and business. With Ragnarok just weeks away and the new God of War game coming out soon, I replayed God of War 2018 in preparation. In replaying God of War 2018, not only was I paying close attention to small things that could indicate the direction of the series, but I also wanted to pay close attention to the theme of the game. God of War has many insane things going on in its world, but at the end of the day, we need to take a step back and ask ourselves one simple question. What is this series really about? Summarizing the plot of God of War is no easy task, but to identify the theme, it's a lot easier. See, Kratos and Atreus go on a wild adventure fighting Norse gods and monsters and all this crazy shit, but at the end of the day, I believe it's abundantly clear that these two games are about fatherhood. Well, and beating the shit out of people. I would argue that the central arc of Kratos in God of War 2018 is him coming to terms with how to be a father and, more specifically, learning how to accept himself for who he is in order to move forward with his role as a dad. This isn't that hard to put together. At the beginning of the game, Kratos is shown to be very closed off towards Atreus. He's gruff, angry, and he struggles to comfort his son when the boy clearly needs it. He has a difficult time expressing himself to this boy who, prior to the events of the game, he didn't really spend time with.
What are you doing? Again.
Stop it!
Again! Boy, look at me. Look at me, boy.
I'm sorry.
Do not be sorry. Be better.
Yeah, you're not exactly Father of the Year material, Kratos. Kratos is a hard motherfucker who doesn't have the patience for childish things. On top of that, he has hidden his past away in an effort to reinvent himself. However, as he puts on this charade of trying to be something he isn't, he inadvertently hurts his son, and midway through the game, in what is perhaps the best sequence I have ever seen in gaming, he realizes that he can't escape his past. He embraces who he is in order to help his son, and in doing so, the barriers between them dissolve, and ultimately, this is what allows them to strengthen their relationship. By no longer pretending to be a good father, he actually becomes a good father. The whole thing is a message about not really being able to erase the past, but being able to overcome the pain of your past for the betterment of those you love. The message of the game is to be real to yourself and those you love. Don't pretend to be something you're not, and by doing this, you can build a foundation of a solid relationship.
We do it together. Son.
You don't have to be a high school English teacher to put this shit together. Fuck you, Mrs. Brooks. You gave me a D on my analysis of Catcher in the Rye. So if the theme of the first game is coming to terms with your past and embracing fatherhood the right way, what will the theme of the second game be? Without looking at every minute detail in the game and analyzing things like who is hired to do voice acting work, what does this tell us about the sequel simply by watching the trailer? Without getting too deep, I think from the very first image of the first trailer, we have a huge hint of what is going to happen. Kratos is tending a fire when, through the distant winds, we see what initially looks like some sort of monster, but it's instead just Atreus. Salty. Without looking any deeper at anything else, what does this one image tell us? I think this identifies the entire theme of the next game in one simple moment. If the first game is about rectifying your past to be a good father, I'm going to guess the second game has a huge theme of acceptance. accepting the path your child walks even if it's contrary to what you want, learning to trust in your child, accepting the fact that they are growing up and are not childish anymore, and learning that respecting your child's decisions is a key part of fatherhood. In God of War 2018, at the end, we see this strange mural that depicts events of the future where it looks like Atreus is killing Kratos, or maybe he's bringing him back to life. But either way, it's the first time in the entire game we see Atreus in a position of power over Kratos. On top of that, there are multiple instances in the first game where characters either commit patricide or tell stories of patricide.
My son sharpened his dagger on it, right before stabbing me in the back.
What?
She was overcome with grief and shame. For there is nothing nature so reviles as a child who kills their parent.
We're getting a little too deep in my analysis, but my point remains. I think that in Ragnarok, Atreus will endanger Kratos much in the same way Kratos endangered Atreus in the first game. I mean, even without looking at the new trailer and just listening to some of what they say in the first game, this is clear. But in that new trailer, you see Atreus keeping secrets from Kratos, and he says this.
Everyone keeps secrets. Sometimes it's the only way to protect the ones we love.
I mean, I think it's pretty obvious here Atreus is trying to prevent himself from becoming the death of Kratos or from harming Kratos. And to back up the idea that this theme is going to revolve around learning to deal with your kid when they back away from you, look at this exchange.
What is it you will not tell me?
I can't talk about it, but I just need you to trust me.
We follow your every whim.
But you don't believe in any of it.
And still I follow. Because all that matters is that you are safe.
But that's not all that matters. Who's keeping you safe?
I do not need you to protect me.
You sure about that?
I mean, how obvious can it be? The theme is Kratos trying to trust his kid that is pulling away, but Atreus is pulling away because fate dictates that he hurts his father, or maybe he's key to making sure Kratos doesn't die. Listen to those last two lines again.
I do not need you to protect me.
You sure about that?
You don't need to analyze articles of Atreus' clothing to figure out what's gonna happen. Out of the tens of thousands of lines in this game, they chose to put those two in the trailer. They're leading us down a path here. So if we know Atreus is the key to Kratos living or dying, the big question is, will Kratos die in Ragnarok? Well, to answer this question, we could speculate at hints and do a bunch of digging and all that, but after the Majora's Mask video, I kind of need a break from weeks worth of research, so let's just see what they say in the trailer. Maybe if we listen really closely in the trailer, we might be able to get a vague hint into what happens between Kratos and Atreus.
Fate only binds you if you let it.
Oh, well, obviously the answer is that it's Atreus' fate to harm Kratos, but ultimately that won't bind their actions. So I think in the game, Atreus will pull away from Kratos and possibly harm him, but at the end of the day, they'll overcome Atreus' fate, and Kratos and him will walk off together, father and son, and everything will be good. Why am I so confident in this peaceful ending? Well, to answer that, we simply need to think about business. When an organization makes a video game, what do you think is most important to them? Telling a compelling story, making quality gameplay, or making gamers happy? No way, they're in this to make money. Why do you think Disney bought Star Wars? It certainly wasn't to make good Star Wars media.
Somehow Palpatine returned.
They just want to pump out trash so people will buy it and give them more money. All these people care about is money. That's why between 2003 and 2013, Rockstar released 23 games. Then, once they released GTA 5 and realized they could milk a small percentage of the user base to pay a massive amount of real-world money to purchase digital assets, they only made one game in the next decade. We're giving our money to crooks! A company with an IP as big as God of War would never let their main character get killed off. As much as I think a story where Kratos ultimately sacrifices himself for Atreus would be amazing, I just can't see shareholders signing off on a decision that makes it impossible for them to make another God of War game with Kratos. The retort to this is, well, you could make a God of War game with Atreus starring in it, but at this point gamers are so smitten with Kratos and his story, there's no way people would go for a game that didn't star him. It would be like having a Halo game without Master Chief. Plus, everyone would then hate Atreus for killing the person that they like, so if there was another God of War game where you played as Atreus, everyone would be hesitant to play the game because everyone would hate Atreus. It's like in The Last of Us Part 2 when one of the new main characters killed the main character of the previous game in the first half an hour. Then the game had you play as this new woman and try to humanize her, but all you could think about when it showed the highs and lows of this character was, wow, fuck this bitch, she killed Joel. Plus, you can't make money off dead characters, and if a living character is hated by the fan base, you can't make money there either. Why do you think no one dies in Marvel movies? You can't sell toys of dead characters, and all these studios are in it just for the cold hard cash. So based on the themes presented in God of War 2018 and the fact that game studios want to make a shit zillion dollars, here's what I think will happen in Ragnarok. Wait a minute, the kid who plays Atreus is a skateboarder? They need to put this kid in Tony Hawk!
Do a kickflip, boy! Ride that rail, boy!
In the first act, Kratos and Atreus have settled down after the events of God of War 2018, when they're pulled back in because Thor or Freya or someone is pissed at everything they did in the first title, or some weird mystical thing happens to Atreus that they have to take care of. They go on an adventure where the direct enemy they face are the gods, and in order to beat them, they have to bring about Ragnarok. The first act will thrust them into their quest to bring about Ragnarok, but underneath this direct goal, Atreus will be dealing with something that starts to make a rift between him and Kratos appear. The second act will feature a fissure growing between Kratos and Atreus, where Atreus' secret starts to get them into more trouble. Maybe something goes wrong because of the secret, or maybe Atreus wants to do things differently than Kratos, and Kratos gets frustrated with the fact that Atreus is doing his own shit and keeping a secret from him. The secret is that Atreus somehow controls the fate of Kratos, and depending on what he does, Kratos will live or die. I don't know the specifics of this, but Act 2 will probably culminate in Atreus revealing this to Kratos and the power dynamic of the relationship changing. These are just predictions, I could be totally wrong, but I do feel rather confident in the first act and second act, but the third and final act is where I'm not sure what they're really gonna do. Based on the fact that they want to satisfy fans and make money, I'll present what I think is going to happen, and then give you an idea of what I would really love to happen if we take money and fan service out of the equation. So they'll likely play it safe in Act 3, and our heroes will work together to break their fate. Their fate as written will be for Atreus to hurt Kratos or kill him or something like that, but by massacring a whole pantheon of gods, they're able to overcome their fate and ultimately end the game as father and son who are on equal footing. Kratos stops viewing Atreus as a stupid kid, he learns to accept him as his own person, and the two of them are good. Now that's fine, but it's kind of vanilla and kind of boring. So let's talk about how they could make things a lot more interesting. I think that Act 3 should play out mostly to how I think they're going to do it, where Kratos and Atreus work together to break their fate, but at the end of the game they realize they can't enter a situation where Kratos and Atreus can continue as things were at the beginning of the game. Maybe if they stay together, Atreus is absolutely 100% destined to kill Kratos, so Atreus leaves Kratos. Or maybe they actually fight and Kratos kills Atreus by accident. Or Atreus kills Kratos, but Kratos is able to come back to life. Remember, Kratos says death can have him when it earns him.
Death can have me when it earns me.
Death could earn him by having him die at the hands of Atreus. There's a million ways they could play this out, but what I would love to see is an Act 3 that culminates in Kratos and Atreus having to go their separate ways, whether due to fate or someone dying or something like that. Why do I think this would be great? Well, remember, studios like to make money, and with Ragnarok being the second and reportedly final game in this God of War duology, Santa Monica will have to set their sights elsewhere for another God of War game. Now, where could they possibly look? Before God of War 2018 was released, there were extensive discussions to have Kratos and Atreus' adventure set in ancient Egypt. They even have concept art of them in this setting. The big question this game has to answer if they want to continue this series, which, look at those sales figures, why wouldn't they want to, is how do we get Kratos to the pyramids or to another realm so that he can kill more gods and we can make billions of dollars? Well, there's two ways to do that. Either this adventure ends and Kratos and Atreus set off for adventure in Egypt, which is safe but boring, or something horrible happens and Kratos leaves Midgard forever. We've already established a heavy theme of patricide in the first game, and the trailer seems to strongly indicate a rift between our protagonists, so I think a more interesting story would be one where something catastrophic happens between these two. Remember, the catalyst for Kratos' feud with Ares in the very first God of War was the fact that he was tricked into killing his family. If this series is looking to reinvent God of War for Kratos' next adventure as much as they did for him in God of War 2018, I think the best way to do that would be to have something horrible happen, which forces Kratos out of his position of fatherhood and out of Midgard. From there, the door to Egypt and a shit zillion dollars is open to the studio. Now, does Santa Monica have the balls to do a divisive ending like this? I don't think so, and I don't blame them. While this would make for a more interesting story, the fan backlash would be severe if anything happened to Kratos or Atreus. The themes present in the trailer seem to indicate that they're going to play it safe. We know from the first game, Atreus is fated to do something bad to Kratos, but the trailer says this about fate.
Fate only binds you if you let it.
Remember, there are tens of thousands of lines of dialogue in these games, and they chose to put that one in the trailer. There's a reason for that. So I think this will end with Kratos and Atreus being BFFs and leaving Midgard together. But personally, I think it would be a lot more exciting if Kratos experienced loss with Atreus, whether it be Atreus dying or him having to leave Atreus or Atreus being fated to kill him or whatever. Can anyone say fatherhood themes? If he actually loses Atreus, it would be a huge punch in the gut, and it gives the studio ample reason for Kratos to leave Midgard and to be pissed off in the next game. Personally, I find it 1,000 times more interesting when we have to watch our heroes deal with failure rather than victory. So seeing Kratos fail as a father and leave Midgard or die at Atreus' hand would be compelling, but ultimately it could significantly dampen excitement for the next game. I could be totally wrong about all of this. These are just vague speculations, but while I would prefer there to be a schism between Kratos and Atreus, it seems like the game is setting up the two characters to overcome their destiny and end the game in good spirits before they leave Midgard, and then you better look out for 2028's Game of the Year, God of War Egypt. So what do you think? Do you think my predictions are on point for God of War, or do you have predictions of your own that are contrary? I would love to hear what you think is going to happen in the new God of War game, and also I have some great news for you. You're about 15 or 20 minutes closer to the release of this incredible title, so if you want to kill more time, go ahead and check out some other videos on my channel and you'll get that much closer to the new God of War game. I appreciate you checking out the video, and I'll have more content soon. Thanks guys, bye. How the fuck am I gonna get this off me?